Hey guys, Jamie here. I'm here with Steph, who's currently a spoonie living in Switzerland, and she's amazing. I wanted to get her on the podcast because her and I are very similar in the sense that we've both lived in three different countries. We come from America. So, anyway, I'm so excited for this conversation, and we're going to talk about all things living in overseas while having a chronic condition, moving overseas, cultural differences, doctors in Europe, Australia, America. Anyway, welcome to the podcast, Steph. How are you?
Thanks. Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thanks. What's been like
Great.
highs and lows of your week so far?
Well, I've had like a pretty rough past couple of weeks, like a new medical issue came up. We're still trying to figure it out,
Mm,
possible switch in biologics coming. But yeah, like the past few days I've been feeling really good. Kind of gotten back into my routine of working out, which is pretty important for me. So,
so
yeah,
on your
kind of
Instagram, you did like how many kilometers? Like of
well, when
cycling?
when I cycle, I can do up to 30, but like, yeah, anywhere between 20 and 30 is like a pretty normal workout for me.
That's
Um,
amazing.
thanks. Yeah, I used to be like a long distance runner, like
Oh,
pre autoimmune disease and pre
yeah.
like hip surgery and stuff like that. So it's kind of just like it's like part of me. Like I'm always a runner at heart still. So like I like endurance sporting, I'm like, let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
So
That's
thanks.
awesome. And I guess I'd like to know as well, moving into like our next segment, what would you say is your biggest pet peeve?
Probably when people don't say what they mean and they're not direct enough. And
Yes.
it's like, do you want to eat this for dinner, for example? And you're like, I don't know. What do you want? It's like, no, 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 no. I asked you. Like, just give me an answer. Like, I don't want to do this like run around. That kind of drives me
That's
nutty.
so funny. Does that lead into like our next chat about cultural differences? Because
Yeah.
from my understanding, so you mentioned your before to me, your husband is German, you're
Yeah,
from Texas, and you guys live in Switzerland.
correct. Yeah,
So are people
major
more,
culture.
yeah, it's just like totally different cultures. Are Germans more direct?
Very direct.
Yeah.
Like, very direct. I was not ready for that when I moved. And it took me quite a while to like get used to it. Like I hope I don't cross anything, but like Americans are very consumed with how other people's feeling, like how
Yeah.
everyone else is feeling. You know what I mean? And then you move to Europe and it's like you kind of like deal with yourself and you do worry about others, but you take care of yourself and it's kind of hard to explain, but I feel
No, no, no,
you
I see
might
what you're saying.
understand. It's like you lived in France as well. It's just, I don't know. Germans are very direct, and I've picked this up after living with one for 10 years now. So,
Yeah. I'm sure you would have to because that can cause some like miscommunication in
oh,
a
yeah, there's been
marriage.
a lot of cultural like miscommunication. And yeah, sometimes we joke, and I have to tell my husband actually, like, okay, don't be that German. Take a little bit of the American now, like be a little bit
Yeah.
more get emotional a little bit for me. So
And I'm sure he does the same to you. He's like, I need you to be German
absolutely.
right now.
Yes, we
Yeah.
do this to each other and it's totally acceptable.
I'm excited to see how your 1 year old turns out.
I am too. Like she's gonna be probably the most direct diva we've ever seen. We joke she's a diva. She's very has a lot of personality already. So
I love that. Yeah, look,
yeah.
I've always been a fairly direct person and I've had to learn one to ask questions in a way that gets a more direct answer from people and two read between the lines in a lot of times like because sometimes like look, I love Australians, but sometimes that can be a struggle is like they're hyper polite and I've had issues with this. I don't necessarily think that's bad at all. I think that's beautiful. I've just had to struggle personally because even in America like we're more direct than Australians. So Australians are like another level, and it's like they'll say one thing but they won't mean it.
Yeah, exactly. You have to like figure out what they mean, and this is exhausting. Like it's
Yeah.
just like, let's get to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, or like for example, like we'll go out for a meal or whatever, and they'll pay because a lot of times you can't split checks, and I'll be like, oh, I'll send you money, and they're like, no, 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 it's fine, don't worry about it. But they really want you to send them money. You know what I mean?
But they can't ask you.
They're like, no, 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 it's fine, but you should really send them money because that's
Proper thing to
the
do.
cultural thing to do. So
Yeah.
I've had to learn. I don't think I'm very good at it still. But yeah, there's situations where I'm like, you're not saying what you mean, and I'm like, anyway, cultures. But again, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I love Australia. I love Australian cultures. I think Americans can probably sometimes be too direct, and probably even Germans. So
No, absolutely. Like it can like hurt your feelings if you're not used to it. Like seriously, but I think it's kind of goes with the territory of moving abroad in a sense. Like you kind of adapt, and it's not like you lose who you were or how you grew up, but you definitely pick up parts of the other culture that you find attractive in a weird way.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And yeah, living abroad definitely changes you as a person. And I don't know if I'd say your ideals completely, but it does change your outlook and how you deal with things in life. And yeah, it kind of makes you see the world also, and you see how other people live, and you take from each culture what you like, which is kind of, I don't know, I think it's kind of beautiful too.
I think it goes back as well. This is something that I really believe is that like there's not necessarily a right way to do life or
Absolutely.
like
Yeah.
life or even opinions and all of that is like I have a difference in opinions than the next person, for example. But that doesn't mean they're wrong, and it doesn't mean I'm wrong if we disagree.
Right.
It's just we have different ways of seeing things, and that's one thing that I think living abroad has taught me is like what one culture, because I lived, for those of you that don't know, I lived in Paris for 3 years, Paris, France, and I've been in Australia for 3 years, and I'm originally from America. So obviously like three pretty different cultures. And one thing I learned is like it's not what works in Paris doesn't work in America, doesn't work in Australia,
Yeah.
So I'm interested to hear, because one of the main reasons I wanted to like get you on the podcast and chat about this is because we both lived in 3 different countries, and I've talked to quite a few spoonies who have either considered moving overseas or wanted to move overseas. And because we've both done that as spoonies and like had 3 different countries where we've experienced the medical system,
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. So when you moved to Europe, what was that like for you as a spoonie? And what was it like? What would you say were big differences between America and Europe, and particularly Germany and Switzerland?
I think I lived in Germany for 2.5 years, and I've lived in Switzerland for the past 7.5. And when I moved to Germany, it was just a massive culture shock. I did not speak the language, like nothing. Like we're talking, I listened to CDs in my car back in Texas before I moved to try and learn like basics, which doesn't get you much really of anything. But how it dealt with my medical, it was pretty heavy. It was scary, like I came from America with all of my medical backgrounds. Like I asked all my doctors to give me printouts, and I actually only came, I think, with my rheumatologist's medical records,
Okay.
Which of course, how as a spoonie you come with like a mini book, and
yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
I had a bag.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, here are my
plastic
MRIs
bag with all of my
and yeah. And And then the thing is that I moved with, I think, like 3 months of my prescriptions at the time, you know, because I did the mail away order in the States for that. So I came with 3 months worth of medication, and I knew I had to find all my doctors within 3 months to find these medications so I wouldn't have any issues there. And you know, I basically just found a house. They call it like a house arts. So like a house doctor, like your PCP back home, your primary care
Okay.
physician out of the States, that had to refer me, of course, to a rheumatologist and whatever specialists I needed. And I'm going to just say house doctor because it's the
Yeah, that's
German's
fine.
just going to stick. He spoke English with me, and he was very friendly, and actually he was probably favorite doctor back in Germany. But once I got to the rheumatologist, there was not such a base of English with him. Like I was the only English speaking patient, which became stressful on my part.
Yeah.
And my husband did travel for work a lot when I married him. So he wasn't there for this appointment. And I had actually my husband's best friend that traveled to Texas for our wedding, like come with me to my first rheumatologist appointment to help me translate. So I think that
That's
it was like the
things
biggest.
you do.
I know.
That's all I can say.
I feel like as a spoonie, you like have no shame going to a doctor's office or like explaining your medical. So you're like, husband's best friend, come in on this. Like,
at least it wasn't like a gynecologist or something, right?
No, yeah, at least it was a rheumatologist. But yeah, I mean, it's scary because you don't know the language, but the difference is Germany was a little bit difficult for me. And then we moved to Switzerland, and I feel like the Swiss medical system is so easy to navigate. But I will be honest, I'm not sure if that's easier because my knowledge of German, the German language has grown, and I'm able to go to a doctor's appointment in German now, if needed. And, you know, like I don't know, I think I have a better grasp possibly because of the language, but it is a completely different medical system here as well. So I don't know if I'm answering your question properly or not. But
and then I guess we've talked about this a little bit before in our initial chat, but how would you rate, like, for example, in your experience, the medical system in Switzerland, for example, versus in America?
Top, like, wow, out of this world. Yes, like we would have gone broke because of my medical care in the States. I've had a massive hip reconstruction surgery here in Switzerland, and amazing coverage. Like we're talking amazing. And from the time of diagnosis to the surgery was 3 weeks total. I mean, this is insane, unheard of. And I know people in the States that have had this same hip reconstruction surgery. Like we're talking like a year wait. I mean, I just feel like everything moves so much quicker here in Switzerland. I've never had a rheumatologist that I feel has taken such good care of me. Like he cares about not only me and my health, but I feel like he looks at me as a person and not my conditions. And, you know, he always tells me that we're going to make these decisions together, which makes, like, as a spoonie, to hear that, you're just like, excuse, like, wait, let me like wipe away my tears real quick. You know what I mean?
Did you just validate me and then say that we're going to work together? What?
Yeah, like, wait, we're like friends too? Like, wait a second. Like, it's so kind of weird. It's so weird to say, but I feel like he's like my friend, especially I know like with lockdown and COVID, like I've seen him more than so many people in my life right now, but like I'm so comfortable with him, and like I feel that he's really truly there for my quality of life, and like will tell me, I mean, he does have the directness. Swiss are also very direct, but they do, I mean, he'll tell me, like, I think when I didn't want to be sent to the surgeon for my hip issue 3 years ago, I mean, he just like looked me in the face and he's like, I think you need a different like set of mind. Like you're going to the hip, like this is it. Like you are limping. Like I'm sorry, but like up front, you have to have a surgery now. Like, and sometimes you need that. But like if I had
Yeah.
just probably moved here from America, I would have been like, oh, what? You know, it's like a
Yeah, like,
completely
don't tell me what
different.
to do.
Yeah, like it's my decision. If I want to limp the rest of my life, I will. No, but
Yeah.
yeah. I just feel everything moves quickly, and I don't say I can complain, but like tell them a new symptom or something's flaring that will not go away. Like he checks it out immediately. And I feel in other countries it's kind of like, well, let's like give it some more time, or I don't know. I don't feel, I guess back in the States, now that I've lived elsewhere, I feel that here they definitely want to get on top of things right away.
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
feel almost in the States, they're a little bit too worried about the money, what things
Yeah.
cost, or things like this.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I just want to, because I'd love to share a little bit about my experience, but I want to also preface this with this is our individual experience. So what our
Correct.
experience with this might be some different than someone else's experience, because when I lived in Paris, in Europe, and it's obviously each country is very different, but I got gaslighted by doctors so much. It was like, oh, you have depression or you need to do more exercises. Because at the time I was dealing with chronic pain primarily. It was just like this terrible back pain as a result of a car accident. So I was going to doctors for that. And they're like, oh, like you have depression. And I had some fatigue at the time, but they like prescribed swimming and gave me like some pain medication and all of that. And it wasn't that validation. There was none of that. And except for one doctor, but that was kind of sort of towards the end of my stay in Australia, where I kind of realized like I don't think that I'm gonna, or sorry, in towards the end of my stay in Paris, when I realized that I don't think I'm gonna get the help I need. And I also had to quit my job, and I was staying with some friends, and it was kind of like, and they were putting me up for free, and it was kind of like I'm gonna stay with them for 2 months and see if 2 months of rest helps, and it didn't. And so I just had to make the choice. I just had to move back and move to the US and move in with my family after having been gaslighted by all of these doctors.
How frustrating.
And yeah, it was really hard because like I didn't have the language barrier as much because I'm bilingual in French and English. But I think it wasn't as much that I didn't speak the language as I was foreign. So there was a level of, oh, you're far from your family, so you're probably depressed, or it was like they were
There's always something else.
super condescending. All of the doctors are very condescending, and it just felt so invalidated. So I think there was a cultural difference in that from that perspective. And I moved back to the US, and I started seeing a naturopath who diagnosed me with chronic fatigue syndrome. And I wasn't expecting that diagnosis. It was very unexpected. And then went on this whole journey of healing. And my experience with actually like the US medical system has been better, but mostly because I went to see a non-natural doctor one time, and she basically said, oh, like, we don't really do chronic fatigue syndrome. Like, and she acknowledged it existed, but she was like, we don't really do that. We don't treat that.
You almost have to like respect people that are like, I'm not going to deal with you, which I've actually had over here. Like recently this has happened, kind of like, you're a very heavy case. Like you need to stick with someone else. And I'm just like,
yeah,
all right, thanks. I respect this. Like, but also like, can you tell me why? Like, you kind of want to know.
Yeah. Well, and then I also was saying, like, I had a yeast infection. I had candida. And I would told her about that, and she was like, oh yeah, like, we don't really believe that exists. I was like, okay.
Oh
but to be honest, I went to this doctor not because I wanted to, but because like my parents were like, at least see one Western medicine doctor. And I was like, yep, okay, I'll do it for you.
Yeah.
And it didn't end up being helpful. But I saw a naturopath, I saw integrative, a nurse practitioner who was like integrative, and then physiotherapists and all of that. And that's like the practitioners themselves were really great. I didn't have a lot of coverage for this stuff,
Yeah,
which you
that's the
probably, I
thing.
don't know if you
Yeah.
struggled with that in the US.
Yeah. I think I had PT once, physiotherapy once in the States that came from a car accident. But never for like the chronic pain issues, really.
Mm,
Um, it's kind of hard. Like I know definitely my health has gotten worse since I've moved to Europe, but a lot. I mean, clearly, I mean, our lives just take crazy paths with our medical on their own. But
yeah.
yeah, the coverage in the States was hefty. You know, like you're always worried if insurance will cover it, if they won't. Um, is it worth it for me to try this for the cost? Like this is very
Yep.
nerve-wracking. Um, whereas here I don't really worry about that. You know, I'm not allowed in Switzerland to have private healthcare or any like extras on my insurance because
Okay.
of pre-existing conditions. But I've never had an issue. Like, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not, you know, like even my chiropractic care is covered under basic insurance, and that's
Wow.
incredible.
Yeah.
And I'm not downing or dissing the US healthcare system at all. You know, I just think it could use some improvements.
I think the main thing is like there's a lot of really good doctors out there. There's a lot of like people that
Yeah,
have a passion to
absolutely.
help people with chronic illness. It's just it's very challenging when you have a chronic illness and all of these treatments are alternative. They're not covered by insurance, but you also can't work because you can't walk, you have chronic pain. All of these, it's like it's this vicious cycle of how do you get out of this
It
when the
is.
treatments that are available cost so much money. And like I struggled with that. I had to set up a GoFundMe to help pay for some of my medical expenses. And even then, like I'm still paying off some of those expenses. And
I believe that.
it's just it's crazy. So I mean, there's there's a lot there. Um and then when I moved to Australia, I've only seen a GP like a couple of times. And the only thing that and we call them here GPs, home doctor, general practitioner.
General practitioner, yeah.
I love it how there's like just different names as well.
Yeah.
And the only thing that honestly I felt was useful is they prescribed a blood test and tested my iron levels, which was good. And I only pay like $15 out of pocket to see a GP, and I didn't pay anything for my blood test, which is pretty good because I'm on student insurance.
Ooh, yeah.
So, but I've seen a lot of alternative doctors and chiropractors and physios here, and none of that's covered under my own insurance. So I've had to pay out of pocket.
It's
But they've been
hefty.
good.
Yeah. That's good.
So my next sort of question is how did you, because you said you moved to Europe and you had like the 3 months all set. How did you like that takes a lot of courage, I think. And it took a lot of courage, I think, for me to move from the US to Sydney while I had chronic fatigue syndrome. How did you,
Absolutely.
I mean, were you worried about relapsing? Were you worried about what would happen? How did you manage that stress? And what made it worth it for you?
Well, I moved for love. So
Yeah.
I guess that kind of made it all worth it, you know? And
Yeah.
I guess I didn't feel alone because I had my husband to lean on to kind of help me figure out how to navigate. I mean, I was very open with him. He clearly knew my like medical background.
Yeah.
When we got married, there's been a few added since our marriage.
Sure.
Yeah, but you know, he helped a lot, and I guess the stress, I did have, therapy and to help, like culture was a big problem with me in Germany because I
Mm.
guess I like really didn't know anything and I just straight up moved. I'd never even been there before to even
Right,
visit.
especially from Texas.
Yeah. I mean, I'm from Houston, which is a big city,
Yeah,
but
but
still
I mean, the South and the Northwest where I'm from, it's like it's
totally different.
you don't see like people that aren't American there, like as much,
Yeah,
at least in
okay. Yeah,
Oregon, where I'm
okay,
from.
no,
Like,
Texas is like Houston's a pretty big melting pot.
okay,
Um,
good.
which is, yeah, I mean, like one of my really good friends back in Houston's Moroccan. So I
Okay.
feel like I was exposed a little bit, quite a lot actually, like I wasn't like shocked with seeing different people. It was just the culture and how things
Yeah.
work and everything. But yeah, back to your question, I don't know. People tell me I was brave all the time, but I don't really see it that way. I don't know. It was just kind of like an adventure in my mind. Like, I want to do this, and my medical is not going to stop me. And let's go figure this out. And yeah, I
Yeah.
met a couple of bad doctors, and you just don't go back and you find someone else. You find people you're comfortable with and that listen to you, and hopefully it doesn't take too long. You know, I
Honestly,
don't.
yeah. I think you're right in the sense of like it's just one of those things where you do it because of love or because you feel like that's what you meant to do. But you have to admit that like going to another country and navigating health issues and that's a
Terrifying. Yeah.
it's terrifying. Like you must have been terrified.
Yeah, it can be terrifying. I mean, like, I think the biggest terrifying thing was I had the first surgery I had in Switzerland was my appendix like was taken out,
Yeah.
and this was like the worst hospital experience of my life.
Okay.
I was just it was probably 2 years after we moved here, and I don't know, the language barrier. So like trying to speak in your second language when you're in so much pain because they
Yeah.
did not give me pain meds after I woke up. Um, I like it was pretty bad. I mean, I was listened to, but I actually like hit a nurse. This is not something I'm proud of, but it happened because they weren't listening to me. I'm also like, if you know my personality, I'm a very loud, outgoing person, and this woman just kept telling me, "You're fine, you're fine." And she kept like leaving the room, and I'm like pushing the button, and I'm just like, "Lady," and I just, like, and she's like, "I'm calling the doctor now," and I'm like, "Thank God, like this is what it took." Um, I mean, but like, I was like,
You hit a
I
nurse.
just couldn't believe this was happening to me. Like this, like you woke up from surgery and you guys are telling me to take like basically like you have Tylenol in me right now.
You're
Like,
like, I
is
need
this
morphine.
like, come on, lady? Um, I don't know. I just feel like the language was kind of
Yeah.
issue. And then after that surgery, I was like crying to my husband, like I'm never doing this again, like ever, ever, ever. Um, yeah, and then I had massive hip surgeries in the hospital for 7 weeks, and it first night was a bit of a mishap, but like after that, smooth sailing, and
Yeah.
like I think it's scary, definitely scary, especially when I think the language is the scariest part because when I'm in a massive amount of pain, the brain fog comes in, right?
Yeah.
I like I'll just I'll try to speak in German and then it's at some point I'm like, can I please go to English? And even then it's a struggle.
Yeah.
Um, but the language is scary because you're not like, are they understanding me? Like, do they really understand what I'm saying right now?
Yeah.
And then sometimes if my husband's there or pop in and he'll be like, you weren't understanding them at all. And I'm like, whoa, okay. And he's like, they're not getting you either. It's kind of it's a weird thing, I don't know if this
Yeah.
happened to you in France at all. It's
Well,
kind of hard to
I got my
explain.
appendix out in France, actually.
Did you? Okay.
I left my appendix in France.
Yay. They're both in
Um,
Europe.
Probably the worst hospital experience as well, to be honest. They left me in the ER for like 12 hours.
Oh, wow.
And then my phone died, and I was living with like a French family that was kind of had put me up and like low key adopted me while I was there. And I think they actually forgot about me while I was in the ER.
Oh my
Like
gosh.
legit. And ended up calling because I went because I was getting stomach pain and I had told my host dad, like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna go to the doctor because I'm getting stomach pain. And I felt like is it Amelia from like that children's book? Like I woke up in the middle of the night and something wasn't right. Like
Oh yes.
in
Yes.
Paris. Um so and he thought I was on my period and he's like, "Oh yeah, she's just having period pain." And so I went to the doctor, they sent me to the ER. Turns out I had an inflamed appendix. Got
Okay.
operated on. And I didn't hit the nurse, but I hit on the nurse. And I was telling him, I was like,
Okay.
"Oh, you're cute." And like I was like totally drugged. I was like, "Oh, hey." And I don't remember this, but I was told later that that's what I was doing.
It's amazing.
Um, but you know what was bad about it is like not bad is the word, but like it just I think just sitting in the ER and waiting for so long and not getting treatment and then like they didn't it was just a really uncomfortable it was and again it wasn't the language barrier, it was the cultural barrier. It was like feeling like I wasn't understood in the sense of or I wasn't advocated for, if that makes
Yes,
sense.
that happens a lot. Yes, I understand that.
Or
And that's
the nurse
very
was like
important.
doing the ultrasound looking for my appendix. And then she was like, she pressed down really hard with the thing and she's like, "Is it there?" And I'm like, "Yes, it's there." Like it just like she pressed down like right on. And I was like, "Are you serious? Like, do you
Uh,
even know what you're doing?" Anyway, and then it was the same. Like I was kept asking for pain meds. And this is the other thing, they didn't do it laparoscopically. They
oh my God,
opened
are
me
you
up, and
kidding?
this was only like 5 years ago or 6 years ago. And it's because the doctor was like in his 60s and didn't want to learn a new method,
Oh my gosh.
which is like annoying because then that leaves scar tissue for the rest of your life and that sort of thing.
You also just have like unnecessary long recovery from such what could have been a simple, few weeks of, well, like
Yeah.
more like 6 weeks. But yeah, like, wow, I'm sorry you had to go through that.
Well, same to you.
Well,
Our
thank
appendix are in Europe.
It's in Europe. Our
It was
unnecessary
my
body
gift
parts.
to the world.
Your parting gift.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So did you, when you moved to Europe, like obviously that was really hard and like props to you for doing that. Do you feel like it's been a good choice for you and like
Yeah,
how do you
I
feel
do.
looking back and even with your health and all of that, like is this something that you would maybe encourage other people to do if that's what they have a dream to do?
Absolutely. I don't feel that you should not fulfill a dream or go with your gut just because of some, you know, your medical history. I mean, I understand part of it is going to definitely restrict us. We are
Yeah.
all like, unfortunately, as a spoonie, I think every day of my life, I'm like, oh, I would love to go do this today, but I can't. But this is what I can do. And I think if
Yeah.
you want to move somewhere and go and experience a new world, go for it. And like just come prepared, with go through whatever could happen, I guess, and be prepared for what you can be prepared for, you know? Yeah, but I don't regret it at all. I almost feel like, you know, I, I mean, we all get different treatment from different doctors and stuff. And there are bad doctors all around the world. I wouldn't say bad doctors, but doctors that either don't listen to you or gaslight you or don't take you seriously or chunk it off as something else and kind of ignore it. But like, just go for it, and you'll find you kind of like have this gut feeling whether or not a doctor's right for you. And I just go from that there. Wherever you are, find that one that's like your
Yeah.
like go to in a sense, and Yeah, definitely. I don't regret it at all. I would definitely say move abroad as a spoonie. And if you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to connect. um, but yeah, I would definitely go for it.
Yeah.
I think it's doable. As I
Well,
think you're showing too that it's doable. You know, you left as well after a massive. Sorry, my dog.
I love that. Hi, dog.
I have a Great Dane, so it's kind of large. Yeah, I think it's. I would definitely say move.
Yeah, I would
We're
concur.
both. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that's different about us is like you actually had a partner that you moved for, that you moved with, which is awesome. I didn't. So when I moved to Sydney as a spoonie, I still had chronic fatigue syndrome. I was functional to the point where I knew I could work full time, but that was probably like the max, like work full
That's
time and then, that's it.
and then like that's it. Yeah, that's a lot though, especially in a
And
new country.
yeah, so when I made the choice, it was like for me, I just knew that that's what I wanted to do and that I wasn't going to be fulfilled until I did that. And when I moved, I obviously thought about my CFS and it freaked me out. It did freak me out, especially when I was about to board the plane from
Mm-hmm.
the US to Sydney and I was like this is happening and I'm afraid. I'm scared out of my mind. And I was just like, "You know what? Like this is what I want. This is what I wanted for years." And if I relapse, if I get to the point where I can't work or whatever, I'll just fly home and that'll be it. And I'll know.
That's exactly it. Because then you don't have to worry or wonder like what if or what could have been. You know, and then it's out of your mind if it doesn't
Yeah.
work. Yeah, because when I first moved to Germany, we had planned actually that we were going to move back to the States, or I say move back, but you know, we were going to go back to the States after like 2.5, 3 years. And
Yeah.
here we still are, now we're in another country. So yeah, I mean, if you can always try it. And if it doesn't work out, there's always a plane like right there
Yeah.
waiting
And
to go.
obviously, like, I don't know, I think my journey is a little bit interesting because, like, I didn't have any friends. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a place to live. I just came here. And that was,
That is hardcore.
yeah, I mean, I think it was not as hard as moving to Paris because the language barrier didn't exist in Australia and all of that. But I don't know, there's something like I I just believed that it was going to work out and I believed it was what I was meant to do. And it's been 3 years now. And like, it's been everything that I expected and more. Like in terms of my job and study and chronic hope and all of my friends. Like I recovered from CFS while I was in Australia because I think that that's what I needed to be the healthier, best version of myself. But you're right. It's about having the courage to do it, but also making sure you have things in place.
Yeah.
Like you were obviously really smart about it. So maybe for someone thinking about doing this, make sure you have 3 months of medication. Make sure you have
Yeah,
insurance
that
when you
was
go to the new country. Make sure that you have a plan in place if things go wrong, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah,
like
I
how
love
yeah.
that.
Yeah. Also, like, even when I travel now, this is just like, I guess this is probably a very well known spoonie thing. Like, if you have a condition that pops up every now and then, always travel with like a couple of those issues. Like, I always travel with antibiotics, like,
Yeah.
always approved, like, totally down with my doctor and everything. And it's, we know our body so well, I feel better than like we're very in tune to ourselves, I
Yeah.
feel like as spoonies, we're very like something's wrong, something's going to happen. And you take your mind back to like, what is this? So like come prepared for every single little bit event. And even if you're like, oh, I'll find someone then, no, just have it with you. Take all medical records. I had all MRI CDs I could possibly get my hands on. I don't think any doctor opened them, but
Yeah.
like they still, like my rheumatologist still has my medical records from my rheumatologist in the States from 10 years ago. Like this is important. you know?
Yeah.
So definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and look, we both did it and it's been a great thing. And again, I don't think it's for everyone. Like I think that obviously you need to evaluate your own condition where you're at in your own life and like
Absolutely.
be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, look, is this doable?" But I, like I would in my view, it's like don't let your condition hold you back from pursuing dreams and it's okay to
Absolutely.
fail. Like, say you move to
Yeah.
another country and relapse or something happens, as long as you know that you can get a plane and go home, go for it. Like, I mean,
Absolutely.
that would be my sort of
Yeah.
advice.
And the other, like, one of the best parts about being, like, like an expat, is the expat community, and I'm sure you've experienced this too. Like, your friends become your family abroad. And yeah, if you need something, you always have, at least like one or two people you can count on for
Yeah.
anything. And this is very important as well. And now with, social media as it is, like, it's very easy to connect. And so, like, as a spoonie, just connect with people if you can in your area. And yeah, be each other's support. Like, that's,
Yeah.
like, you'd be amazed. Like, I somehow came in contact with you, this
Yeah.
happened.
Totally.
Yeah.
Also, low key love the dog snoring in the background.
Oh my God, you hear this?
For all of you listening, that's Stephanie's Great Dane featuring Stephanie's
The
Great
dog.
Dane. Yeah, and I think again, there's just so much richness and it's not for everyone, but there's so much richness in living in other countries and getting to know different cultures and understanding that there is different perspectives out there, different ways of doing things.
There's also
Like
different treatments that you may not have
yeah,
thought of before, or that you may not have considered from your back home country. And then you move and you're like, maybe there's a reason like so many people do this over here, and it may work for you, it may not, but yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Always that.
Well, and on the last note, do you have any recommendations for like any books or podcasts or even shows either on the subject of like moving overseas or just some stuff that you're like interested in and listening to at the moment?
Oh man, lacking on the podcast because I have a 1-year-old daughter that's keeping me fairly busy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, just the axial spondyloarthritis podcast with Jason Sacco was pretty solid. And then yeah, I don't know.
That's cool. No, that's all good.
There's like a show on Netflix I watched. It's like a very short documentary. I think it's called like In Your Bones or In the Bones, something like this. And it's about ankylosing spondylitis, and it's pretty awesome. There's a guy in there in the middle section that talks about acceptance, and that's 100% correct. I totally identify with this. And it's also just a good thing to see how like normal life and how people deal with AS in general daily life.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll put that in the show notes and so everyone can have a look. And we'll also put your make sure to link to your profile and all of that. If any of you guys are thinking about potentially moving overseas, obviously with COVID, that's probably not as much of an option, but in the longer term, yeah, reach out to us. Happy to answer questions around that. And yeah, thanks so much for sharing your perspective. So it's been really good.
Thanks. It's been awesome. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, follow Stephanie on Instagram. Check out her profile, and we'll see you next week.